Oh please, that little certificate? They give those to everyone. My sister laughed loudly from behind us. My daughter's shoulders stiffened in her graduation gown. Mom, can we just go? My sister leaned forward again. 14 and already peeking. Cute. Then the principal stepped back up to the microphone and said, "Actually, we need to call one more name." And that's when everything shifted. My name is Danielle Harper. I'm 36 years old, and I've been raising my daughter Ava on my own since she was 6. That's 8 years of packing lunches at 5 in the morning, 8 years of sitting at the kitchen table helping with homework after my own 10-hour shift, 8 years of figuring out how to make $40 stretch across a week of groceries. I'm a guidance counselor at a public middle school. I love my job, but it doesn't pay like people think it does. On weekends and most evenings, I tutor kids on the side just to keep up with rent and Ava's school supplies. My life has never looked polished from the outside. There's no new car in my driveway. There are no vacation photos on my phone. But there's a daughter in my house who makes every single sacrifice worth it. My older sister Vanessa has always been the one the family celebrates. She married young, married well. Her husband Richard owns a contracting company, and they live in a 4-bedroom house with a pool and a landscaped yard. Vanessa has always been praised for being put together, for being sharp, for being the one who made it. And me? I was always described as too emotional, too soft, too sensitive. Those were the words my mother used at holidays. Those were the words Vanessa repeated whenever she wanted to remind me of my place. But the thing about being underestimated for your entire life is that people stop watching you. They stop paying attention. And while they're busy looking the other way, you build something they never expected. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect. Ava is quiet. She doesn't raise her hand to show off. She raises it because she genuinely wants to learn. She reads science journals the way other kids watch cartoons. She writes essays that her teachers have called beyond her years. She's not loud about her intelligence. She just carries it with her, steady and calm, like a lantern she doesn't need to wave around. When she was 12, her teachers recommended she skip a grade. We talked about it for weeks. She was nervous. I was nervous. But she wanted it. She worked for it. And she earned it. So when graduation day arrived, it meant more than caps and gowns and programs printed on cheap paper. It was proof. Proof that all those late nights and early mornings and moments of doubt had led somewhere real. This wasn't just a ceremony for me. It was about respect. The kind we had never been given and were done waiting for. If you've ever raised a child on your own and felt invisible doing it, I think you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. If you've ever stood in a room full of family and felt like no matter what you did, it was never quite enough, then this story is for you. Have you ever watched someone you love get belittled while you had to stay calm? If that hits close, go ahead and subscribe, because these stories are for people like us. Hit like and share this with someone who's been doubted, a parent, a kid, anyone who's been told they weren't enough. Now let me take you back to that auditorium, because what happened next still gives me chills. The ceremony was held in the main auditorium of Westfield Middle School. The room smelled like floor polish and warm bodies packed too close together. Rows of metal folding chairs stretched across the basketball court, and the bleachers on either side were filled with parents holding phones in the air, trying to record everything. Paper banners hung from the ceiling, slightly crooked, hand-painted by the student council. A long table sat on the stage covered in certificates and small trophies. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't a private academy with engraved plaques and catered receptions. It was a public school doing its best, and to me, it was beautiful. Vanessa arrived late, of course. She walked in wearing heels that clicked on the gym floor like she wanted everyone to hear her coming. She had her son Ethan beside her, even though this wasn't his school or his ceremony. She sat down right behind me and my mother without saying hello. Instead, she leaned toward Mom and whispered, "How long is this going to take?" These participation award things always drag. I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes forward, watching Ava in the second row of graduates. She looked so small in that oversized gown, her cap tilted slightly to the left. But she was smiling, nervous and proud and trying not to show either one too much. When Ava's name was called for the Academic Excellence Award, I stood up. I clapped so hard my palm stung. Ava walked across the stage carefully, accepted the certificate, and shook the principal's hand. She looked out into the audience and found my face. I mouthed, "I'm so proud of you." She smiled, just barely, the way she does when she's trying not to cry. Behind me, Vanessa clapped slowly. Not the kind of clapping that means congratulations. The kind that means "is that it?" Then she leaned forward so her mouth was practically at my ear. "Let's see how she handles real competition." A couple sitting to our right glanced over. The woman raised her eyebrows. I felt heat crawl up the back of my neck, but I said nothing. Minutes later, Vanessa nudged our mother. "My Ethan's already doing high school math. This is basic." She didn't whisper it. She said it at full volume, like she was ordering coffee. Ethan looked uncomfortable. Even he could feel it. I turned around slowly. "Vanessa, can you please just let this be about Ava today?" She tilted her head. "I'm not doing anything. I'm just saying, don't act like she's some prodigy. She's a sweet kid, but let's be realistic." "She skipped a grade," I said, keeping my voice low. "She earned this." Vanessa smiled. That thin, condescending smile she's been perfecting since we were teenagers. Skipping a grade doesn't mean she's special. It just means the school moved her along. She said it loud enough for the entire row to hear. A man 2 seats down shifted uncomfortably. My mother looked at her hands. I turned back around because if I didn't, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. My hands were shaking in my lap. I pressed them flat against my thighs and stared at the stage. Then the principal, Mr. David Chin, walked back to the microphone. The ceremony had been wrapping up. Students were already fidgeting, ready to throw their caps. But Mr. Chin adjusted the mic and cleared his throat. "Before we close," he said, "we have one more distinction to announce." The auditorium went quiet. I looked at Ava. She looked confused. I looked at Vanessa. She was checking her phone. I turned back to the stage and held my breath. After the ceremony, families flooded the hallway outside the auditorium. The air was thick with perfume and sweat, and the sound of dozens of conversations bouncing off tile walls. Everyone was taking photos. Grandparents were adjusting colors. Kids were pulling off their caps and swinging them around. It should have been a happy blur. For a few minutes, it almost was. Vanessa organized the family photo. She always does. She positioned herself in the center, one arm around our mother, the other around Ethan. She called over our cousin Travis and his wife. She waved at Uncle Don. She arranged everyone with the precision of a wedding photographer. Then she looked at Ava, who was standing beside me holding her certificate, and said, "Sweetie, can you hold the phone and take the picture for us?" I blinked. "She's not taking the picture, Vanessa. She's part of this family." "I know that," Vanessa said, waving her hand. "I just meant, let's do one with the achievers first. Then we'll do a big group one." She pulled Ethan forward and put her hand on his shoulder like he had just won a Nobel Prize. Ethan, who hadn't graduated from anything that day. Ethan, who was just standing there because his mother needed a prop. Ava said nothing. She stepped back. She held her certificate against her chest like a shield, and she stepped back. That image burned into me. My daughter, on her own graduation day, stepping back. I put my arm around her and said, "We'll take our own photos." And we did. Just the two of us, standing against a cinder block wall with a paper banner behind us. It wasn't glamorous. But Ava was smiling again, and that was enough for now. That evening, the family gathered at Uncle Don's house for a post-graduation dinner. Long folding tables in the backyard, paper plates, a cooler full of sodas and beer. Tiki torches lined the fence. The smell of grilled burgers drifted across the yard. Vanessa stood up to give a toast. She held her glass of wine high and said, "Here's to surviving middle school. Real life starts now." She looked directly at Ava when she said it. A few relatives chuckled politely. Ava looked down at her plate. My Aunt Gloria leaned over and whispered to my cousin, "Wasn't this dinner supposed to be for Ava?" I heard it. Vanessa didn't. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Throughout the night, Vanessa worked the tables like a politician. She told my Uncle Don that Ethan was applying to a prestigious private academy. She told my cousin's wife about the new addition they were building on their house. Every sentence was a performance, and every performance was designed to remind everyone that she was winning. Then came the moment I almost didn't survive. I was inside, refilling Ava's lemonade, when I heard Vanessa talking to my mother and Aunt Gloria near the back door. Her voice was low, but not low enough. I'm not saying Ava's not smart. I'm just saying, let's be honest. Danielle works at that school. She's a guidance counselor. You don't think that had something to do with the grade skip? You don't think there was a little special treatment involved? I froze in the kitchen. The pitcher shook in my hand. I mean, come on, Vanessa continued. If any other parent worked at the school and their kid just happened to skip a grade, we'd all raise an eyebrow. My mother said nothing. Aunt Gloria said, well, I hadn't thought about it like that. And there it was. Vanessa wasn't just mocking my daughter anymore. She was trying to damage my professional reputation. She was planting a seed that I had cheated the system. That Ava's achievement was a fraud. That I was a fraud. I set the pitcher down on the counter. The ice inside shifted and cracked. I stood there for a long minute, listening to the sound of the refrigerator humming and the distant laughter from the yard. I made a decision in that silence. I was done. Done explaining. Done defending. Done staying quiet so Vanessa could stay comfortable. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that for the past 4 years, I had been building something in the quiet hours after Ava went to sleep. It started as a blog. Just a simple website where I wrote about parenting, about raising a gifted child on a tight budget, about navigating schools and family expectations, and the loneliness that comes with doing it all alone. I posted once a week, sometimes twice. I didn't use my real name. I didn't post photos. I called it the quiet table because that's where I always felt I was sitting, the quiet table in the back of every family gathering, every staff meeting, every room where louder people took up all the space. Within a year, the blog had 10,000 readers. By year 2, it had 50,000. By the time Ava's graduation came around, the quiet table had over 300,000 regular readers. Parents from across the country wrote to me. Teachers shared my articles in staff lounges. School counselors printed my posts and pinned them to bulletin boards. I had been featured in 2 education journals, both times anonymously. I never told anyone in my family. The irony was almost too perfect. At Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago, Vanessa had laughed about those online mommy bloggers who think the world cares about their opinions. Imagine spending your evenings writing little essays that nobody reads, she said, cutting into her turkey. I had smiled politely and passed the cranberry sauce. That night I went home and wrote a piece about families who confuse volume with value. It was shared 40,000 times. 3 months before graduation, I received an email from the Regional Education Board. They had been reading The Quiet Table for over a year. They wanted to know if the anonymous author would be willing to consult on a new gifted mentorship program, specifically designed for underserved students in public schools. I said yes. We had several meetings over video, my camera always off, my identity protected. I helped design the framework, the selection criteria, the application process. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I knew what it felt like to be a kid like Ava, brilliant and overlooked. What I didn't know was that Mr. Chin, our school principal, was one of the board members involved in the program. He had figured out who I was. He never said a word. He just smiled at me in the hallway one Tuesday morning and said, "Keep writing, Danielle. It matters more than you think." I didn't need applause from my sister. I just needed my daughter to see what dignity looks like. And I was about to get the chance to show her. There was one other person who knew everything. Dr. Helen Morris, a retired superintendent who had been my mentor since my first year as a counselor. Helen was 71 years old with silver hair she kept in a tight bun and a voice that could silence a boardroom without ever rising above a conversational tone. She had been the one to encourage me to start writing in the first place. "You have a perspective that people need to hear," she told me once over coffee in her living room, surrounded by shelves overflowing with books about education and child psychology. The smell of chamomile tea filled the room that afternoon. "You just need to stop waiting for permission to use it." Helen knew about the quiet table from the very first post. She proofread my early articles. She pushed me to submit to journals. She told me when I was being too careful and when I was being exactly brave enough. She was the only person in my life who had ever said, "Danielle, you are not too soft. You are exactly the kind of strong that scares people who only understand loud." Helen was attending the graduation. Not by accident. Mr. Chin had invited her as a special guest because of her involvement in the new mentorship program. She arrived early, sat in the front row near the stage, and caught my eye just before the ceremony started. She gave me a small nod. Nothing dramatic. Just a nod that said, "I know what's coming and you're ready." During the dinner at Uncle Don's house, while Vanessa was holding court and bragging about Ethan's private school plans, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Helen. "Tomorrow's going to be a good day for your girl. Stay steady." I didn't respond. I just closed my eyes for a second and let the words settle. Back at the ceremony, when Mr. Chin had returned to the microphone, I hadn't known exactly what was coming. I knew the mentorship program was being announced soon. I knew Ava had submitted an application and a research project, a paper about the effects of light pollution on local insect populations that she had worked on for months in our tiny backyard with a second-hand microscope and a notebook full of meticulous observations. But I didn't know the timeline. I didn't know it would be today. Vanessa was still smirking in her seat, her phone half raised like she was about to start texting. My mother sat still beside her. The auditorium was restless, students ready to leave, parents already planning their exits. Then Mr. Chin spoke. "We have one final and very special recognition this afternoon. This year, our district partnered with the Regional Education Board to launch a brand new STEM mentorship grant. This grant is competitive. It received over 200 applications from students across 7 counties. The selection was made by an independent external review board with no involvement from any local school staff." He paused. The room went still. Even the kids stopped fidgeting. "I am proud to announce that the youngest recipient of this grant and the highest-scored applicant in the entire district is a student from this school." My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears, louder than the rustle of programs and the creak of chairs around me. "Ava Harper, please come back to the stage." Ava stood slowly. Her cap was off by then, her hair slightly messy, her gown wrinkled from sitting. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide and uncertain. I nodded and whispered, "Go." She walked to the stage for the second time that day. But this time, the applause was different. It wasn't polite. It was real. Teachers were standing. Parents who had no idea who she was were clapping because they could hear in Mr. Chen's voice that this mattered. Mr. Chen continued. Ava's application included an independent research project on urban light pollution and its impact on nocturnal insect behavior. Her essay was described by the review board as, quote, "remarkably mature, rigorously observed, and deeply compassionate in its scientific curiosity." She will receive a full mentorship package, including lab access, university-level tutoring, and a scholarship fund for future STEM education. Ava stood beside him, holding a plaque now, her hands trembling just slightly. She looked out at the crowd and found me again. This time she didn't hold back the tears. Then Mr. Chen said something I wasn't prepared for. "I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the inspiration behind this program. Many of you may be familiar with an education blog called The Quiet Table. It has been read by hundreds of thousands of parents and educators nationwide. The authors writing about raising gifted children in public schools directly influenced the creation of this mentorship grant. The regional board has asked me to publicly thank the author for their contribution." He looked at me. The author of The Quiet Table is Danielle Harper, Ava's mother, a guidance counselor right here at Westfield Middle School. The room erupted. Not in the way a stadium erupts. In the way a room full of people erupts when they realize they've been standing next to something extraordinary and didn't know it. Teachers I worked with every day turned to look at me with their mouths open. Parents who had read my articles without knowing my face started pointing and whispering. My Aunt Gloria put her hand over her heart. Dr. Helen Morris stood up from the front row. She walked to the microphone, and Mr. Chin stepped aside for her. "I've spent 40 years in education," Helen said, her voice calm and clear. And I have learned that the loudest voices in a room are rarely the most important ones. Danielle Harper has spent years doing what great educators do. She listened. She observed. She wrote with honesty and without ego. And she raised a daughter who embodies every value she writes about. Integrity, curiosity, quiet, unshakable courage. This program exists because one woman decided that her voice mattered, even when the people closest to her told her it didn't. She looked directly at me. Danielle, thank you. I stood up. Not because I wanted attention. Because my legs wouldn't let me sit anymore. I walked to the stage and stood beside my daughter. Ava grabbed my hand and held it tight. Her palm was sweaty and warm, and I never wanted to let go. I looked out at the audience. I saw my mother wiping her eyes. I saw my cousin Travis nodding slowly. And I saw Vanessa. She was sitting very still, her phone in her lap, her face completely unreadable. She tried to clap. Her hands came together a few times, but there was no rhythm to it, no conviction. She looked like someone who had just realized the rules of a game she thought she was winning had changed entirely. Ava leaned into the microphone. Her voice was soft but steady. Thank you. I just want to say that everything I know about working hard and not giving up, I learned from my mom. She never told me I was the best. She told me to keep trying. And she showed me every single day what that looks like. So this is for her too. The auditorium stood. A full standing ovation for a 14-year-old girl and her mother on a stage made of plywood and hope. As we walked off the stage, Vanessa intercepted us near the side steps. She had composed her face into something that was supposed to look supportive, but landed closer to strained. Well, she said. That was quite a surprise. I had no idea you were doing all that writing stuff. I looked at her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You don't get to shrink her to feel taller, I said. Vanessa opened her mouth. Then closed it. Then walked away. The dinner that followed felt like it belonged to a different family. The backyard at Uncle Don's house was the same tiki torches, the same paper plates, the same cooler by the fence. But the atmosphere had shifted like someone had opened every window in a stuffy room. Relatives who had barely acknowledged Ava earlier were now sitting beside her, asking about her research, asking about insects and light and what she wanted to study next. My cousin Travis brought her a soda and said, "Kid, you're going to do amazing things." Aunt Gloria hugged me twice and said, "I had no idea, Danielle. I'm sorry I didn't pay more attention." Vanessa sat at the end of the table. She ate quietly. She didn't give any more toasts. She didn't mention Ethan's private school. She didn't mention anything at all. For the first time in as long as I could remember, my sister had nothing to say. I didn't gloat. I didn't bring it up. I didn't need to replay the moment or rub it in. That was never what this was about. But I did make a decision that night, sitting under the string lights with Ava leaning against my shoulder. I was done allowing Vanessa to set the terms of my worth. I was done shrinking in rooms where I had every right to stand tall. Going forward, there would be boundaries. Real ones. Not the kind you think about but never enforce. The kind you say out loud and hold to, even when it's uncomfortable, even when family calls you dramatic for having them. Before we left, Ava looked up at me. "Mom, I'm not just proud of the award." "What do you mean?" "I'm proud of you. For what you built. For not telling anyone. For just doing it because it mattered." I pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. She smelled like sunscreen and cheap shampoo and everything good in my life. Respect isn't something you demand loudly at a dinner table. It isn't something you perform for an audience. It's something you build, quietly, consistently, in the hours when nobody's watching and nobody's clapping. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, the world notices on its own. The second time they called her name, they didn't just honor my daughter. They reminded me that quiet strength echoes the loudest. If this story hit close to home, I want to talk to you for a second. If you're a parent whose child has ever been mocked, underestimated, or made to feel small by the very people who should have been cheering the loudest, I see you. If you've sat at a table biting your tongue while someone belittled your kid's hard work, I know how that burns. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. And your child's achievements are not less real because someone louder refuses to acknowledge them. Share your story in the comments. Tell me about the moment your child proved everyone wrong or the moment you finally stood up and said enough. Subscribe if you want to be part of a community that lifts up the quiet ones, the ones who work hard without fanfare and deserve to be seen. And if you know a parent or a kid who needs to hear this today, click share. Let this story reach them. Did this story hit home? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Stand tall for your children. They are watching you, and they are learning what courage looks like from the way you carry yourself in hard moments. Your support builds this community. Every like, every comment, every share tells someone out there that they are not alone. Click share to help this story find others who've felt the same way. Your support makes a huge difference.